What's going on, everybody?
How's it going? My name's Rob, and this is my colleague Brandon. We're here with eLease funding. Woo!
We're broadcasting live from our brewery that we own as well. It's called St. Pete Brewing Company. We just celebrated our 7-year anniversary this past, actually 2 weekends ago. We're fortunate enough to make it 7 years, and it has been a hell of a ride ever since. But we're here today to, we work mainly on financing breweries and our other aspect of the.
Yeah, when we got the opportunity to be a part of the virtual conference, we definitely said, yeah, we'd love to do that because we're pretty embedded in the craft beer professionals scene. And basically, eLease funding is a 25-year-old funding source. But 7 years ago, our owner, Tom Williams, decided that he wanted to open up a brewery. So lives here in sunny, beautiful St. Petersburg, Florida. There was only 2 breweries on the scene at that point in time. I believe Three Daughters, Green Bench, and Cycle were all kind of starting up right about the same time. We were number 4 on the scene, and now there's 85 breweries in what we call the Brewery Bay. And so, we all come at this from a brewery background, not actually even a finance background, the guys who work on the ground level at eLease. And the reason why we wanted to speak today is because we wanted to let you guys know who we are and what we do, and why what we do is just a little bit different, because you've all been to banks and you've all been through the route, and you know that there's very little funding out there for startups. And if you don't want to go the SBA route, what do? You borrow money from grandma, or you could round up crowdfund some money, or you could take you and your buddy's savings and kind of string it together. But what we like to do is, with an intimate knowledge of the space, kind of talk to guys and figure out how they're going to put their dream together. And that's where we sit down and we get creative, and we look at the 800 breweries that we've worked with. And with all of that knowledge, we kind of say, well, we've seen this kind of scenario before. Have you thought about this? And if you can get some cash here, we can help you lease this equipment. And if you can get a good cheap lease here, we can help you do this. And if you have a couple dollars to put towards this, we can do the rest. And we try to get super creative in our approach, which makes us uniquely different than the vast majority of anyone out there, especially the banks who are like, what do you want to ferment? A barrel house? A 10 BBL barrel house? And they just don't even know the vernacular. So when you're talking to your banks, it's not the best scenario usually. And even a lot of leasing companies are just pushing paper, and they don't really know what you need as a brewery. Whereas, Brandon will be back here cleaning kegs one morning, and I'll be helping push sales one day. And we understand how tight the brewery margins are and what it takes to be successful. And again, we've got a large sampling of clients we've seen do it right. And we're always here to be an added ear to help you through the process. So we jumped at the bit to be involved in this and hopefully answer some questions that you guys might have about getting funding, or how you get funded to start a brewery, or if you are a shoestring brewery, how do you get to that next level through expansion? And that's why we're here today. So if you guys have any questions, we'd love to help answer to the best of our ability. And if we don't have any questions come in, we'll just start yapping.
Really good at yapping. And right now, what we're seeing in the kind of not post-COVID, but as everything's opening up, our funding sources are very aggressive in the brewing space right now. I mean, we are seeing rates for pieces of equipment that we never thought, like even post-COVID or pre-COVID, that we weren't seeing. Yeah. And where it really, our strongest attribute is being able to turn a story and sell it to our banks in order to rely on our our relationship with them in order to get the best rates possible.
Yeah, let me jump in on that. So when he says a relationship with our banks, obviously most leasing companies that you call, they operate at a broker capacity. So let's say you wanted to go get something from XYZ Leasing. They would take your application, and then they would go to see if they can get an approval from one of their broker partners. Where we are very, very different is we have our own private in-house portfolio of funds. So when Brandon says we're a story lender, what he means by that is if we really like the story, but maybe the credit report or the time in business doesn't really make sense for a traditional bank, and we understand what you're trying to do and it's viable to us, we'll use our in-house portfolio, our own private bank for breweries, to get it done. Now, if you're a more established brewery or you've got killer credit or whatever, we will put together a nice, pretty package and show it to our friends, kind of like Shark Tank, just to see who bites at it. And if multiple people bite at it, who gives us the best rate for you? And then we show you those terms. So Well, you might go to some other leasing company and they deny you or they decline you, or you go to a bank and they just straight up say no. We don't end there. We listen to your story, we sit down, and if it makes sense for our private funds in our space, then we love to help guys get off the ground or get to that next level when a bank or another leasing company says no.
Another thing that sets us apart on, other than being really damn good at financing equipment for breweries, we also are a direct supplier for kegs, and we created the #1 lease to own keg program in the industry. And Rob is the brainchild behind that. He came up with a phenomenal program that now we provide kegs to.
Yeah, it's a 820 something
breweries nationally.
And you probably never heard of us because we don't advertise nationally. We don't blow people up with marketing. It's completely organic. So vendors who have worked with us and love us continue to provide us new clientele. We also have a great community around us in Florida that's rallied behind us, and because they know us as people and they know us as the brewery, trust us. And once they work with us, they see the difference in what they've experienced previously. And along the lines of what Brandon was saying, we're not only a finance company, but we're also a supplier. We have a 10,000 square foot warehouse 2 blocks from here where we supply hundreds and hundreds of breweries with their keg needs. And we created a keg lease option basically that fits a brewery's needs. When you go out and you get these quotes and you see that they want all of this freight up front, they want all these huge deposits, and it's a 30-page contract, it's insane. You know, most people coming into the brewing industry, just like us, it's a second career. And, you know, they might not have an MBA or a finance background, and the fine print can be daunting. And most guys don't know they're in trouble until they hit that 36-month mark and realize, wow, these buyouts are astronomical, or wow, I didn't realize this was a lump sum. And wow, if I can't afford it, I have to send all my kegs back. What we do is different. You know, we make the lowest price buyout in the industry, transparent on day one. It's non-negotiable. It's not rotating. It's not fair market value. It's crystal clear up front so that any dude or any gal who sees our contract on day one knows exactly what they're getting into. And then at the end of it, we don't just take your kegs back. We'll just extend it out. We won't renew another contract. We let it go to month 60, and then you own them outright, never having to pay a lump sum. So we structured it kind of to be more user-friendly for brewery. No deposits ever. We always do a long deferral on the front end so that you guys can get cash flow positive. And we just did all the things that we thought, wow, what would we really need as a brewery to be successful, right?
Like right now, just for the Craft Beer Professionals Conference here, we're offering a 90-day first payment deferral on any of our keg leases. So say you need 3 pallets of half barrels tomorrow. You reach out to us, we'll ship you those 3 pallets. You don't pay a dime for them for the first 90 days, and hopefully you're making profit on those kegs before you even have to start paying.
Yeah, and you know, it's one thing to be rate sensitive, it's another thing to be cash flow sensitive, and so that's where we try to educate guys as well. The name eLease kind of was born out of the .com era in 1995 when our company got started, but it's not like e-commerce. It's E as in education. And the reason why the E is in there because most people don't understand the financial side of things, and we take pride in making sure that this is a right fit, okay? Does a lease make sense for you? Does a finance agreement make sense for you? Does a cash purchase make sense to you? We always try and find out what's best for our clients or our potential clients because, you know, our #1 core value is do no harm. We want to make sure that we're helping people grow. We're not debilitating it by strapping them with debt. We always look at this from a very holistic approach, and I think that's what makes our team really special because, you know, we want to help and we want to be here for the long haul.
Yeah, there's nothing more gratifying than seeing like a $3,000 pallet of half barrels that we leased or financed turn into a $3 million corporation over the next 6 years.
Yeah.
And that's our, it's our bread and butter. That's what we love watching. That's what we love doing.
Yeah, and a lot of banks, I'll keep going back to the bank because most people think finance and they think about their local banks. Most banks don't understand breweries. Is it a food industry? Is it strictly manufacturing? Like, what is all this steel? What does all this mean? What does all this do? They don't understand the taxes around it. So they're really kind of confused and they can't really wrap their heads around it. So we get it. And so if somebody kind of with struggling credit comes and they say, well, we really just need these 3 barrels of kegs and we need a couple of more 3-barrel fermenters. And if we could just get this, we could expand our footprint to a 10-mile radius in our small town. And whereas a bank may say no, strictly based on maybe a credit or a time in business, we're like, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of steel. And if you ever, didn't need it anymore, we're happy to take it back and make sure it gets into somebody's hands that could use it, which kind of like makes it a better deal for us as a lender because we know how to recourse it. And that's just a fancy word for take it back and not lose our ass on it. So that being said, we are more willing to make a deal than a bank because we get the asset, which means the guy is willing to work with us a little bit more on all sorts of parameters.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the deal you just did that was pretty miraculous?
So we work with startups all the time, and there's hardly any banks out there who are working with startups, and if they are pretty astronomical rates. I mean, that's just a case of the industry. It's startup rates for an industry that's been horribly affected by COVID, and banks have a hard time with really grasping that, wrapping their hands around it. I recently had a deal that was a Wild Goose's Gosling line. It's a $33,000 amazing piece of equipment that one of my brewery partners I've been working with on the keg side of things for a couple of months now. They reached out in December wanting to get into packaging. They haven't even opened yet. Their grand opening was in January. I advised them to put $5,000 down as a deposit just in order to get the piece in production. They reached back out to me this past week after they've had 4 months in business. We're able to get really creative. So on the Secretary of State, they filed back in 2018. So from a bank's perspective, they see this as a 3 or 4 year old brewery. I was able to take the past 3 months bank statements, our reputation and our credibility with the bank, and the fact that we have been leasing them kegs for the past, I think we did a little over past 6 months or so. Able to take that, show it to our bank. Our bank was able to look at them like, oh, this is a thriving business right now. Got on absolutely a phenomenal rate, better than I was I was ever expecting, and came back to the customer, and he was ecstatic. I mean,
that's a pretty amazing story, and that doesn't happen, like once in a blue moon. These are things that happen when, like I said, we're a story lender. So if we know what's going on, and we've already been working with a client with kegs, and we have a comparable lending reference to show the people that we broker with, like, hey, this is a good guy. He's been making his payments on his 2 pallets of kegs for 6 months. He's always communicative. This is a great piece of collateral. We really trust this guy. Will you work with him? Typically, it's a much more favorable scenario than the brewery going directly to a lender when they have no relationship with that lender. So that's where we actually get to act as big brother quite a lot of the time is, hey, take our credibility. We might send one bank a lot of deals, and if those deals are good for the bank, then they like working with us. So they know when a deal comes through us, it's going to be a good bet because, again, we're looking at the person, we're looking at the character, we're looking at the asset, we're looking at does it make sense for the company. And when Brandon put this deal together, he really made it a no questions asked kind of situation for our broker partner. Like, yeah, this is a great deal. Yeah. Thank you for bringing this to the table. Here's a great rate.
Even if we weren't able to get this approved that we did for this brewery, we were going to keep it in-house anyways. I had already presented terms to the customer on a higher rate, startup rate, basically in-house funds. And I went back and I was able to fight for a better deal through one of our funding sources. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do is essentially save you money, help you get a better deal, and help you get the equipment you need.
And grow when you need to grow, right?
Yeah.
So, it's growth happens kind of sporadically. Like, we can't always plan it. It's like that in our personal lives. It's like that in our professional lives. You don't always know when that opportunity is going to come knocking. When a distributor comes to you and says, hey, listen, we just tried your brand last week. It's absolutely phenomenal. And if we could get 600 kegs of this 30 days from now, we can have you blown out in your market. Well, how do I get 600 kegs at $80 a pop? That's a lot of money. That's where we come into play. We help facilitate that growth with no money down, 90-day deferrals for your first payment. We let the ball get rolling on a positive cash flow note for you before even a small payment is due to us. So that's just one quick example. I have another example that I'm currently working on right now. There's a brewery here. I've been their keg supplier for 4 years in Florida, and they're in the middle of a $250,000 mild expansions. Their bank's weren't very keen on the idea, couldn't get a hard approval. They kept getting pushed off. Oh, we'll look at it in the next quarter. Oh, we'll look at it in our next credit review. Finally, I was like, well, let me take a look at this for you. We couldn't do the whole 250 up front, but I said, is this a multi-phase expansion? He says, yeah, of course it is. I said, well, what does phase one look like? Oh, it's $74,000. Let me see if I can work on that. I got the approval in 3 hours, turns out to the customer, and now phase one is underway. And in 3 months, when we're ready for phase two, we're sure we're going to be able to make that happen. And regardless of if we can help or not on phase three, hopefully the growth generated by phase one and phase two could facilitate phase three. So that's where we come in as a partner with breweries, not just a lender. We take a look at the long game. How can we help now? What do you need now to grow? And where do we fit in the equation? Or do we fit? We're always happy to say, yeah, this isn't in our wheelbox. This isn't our.
We're the fastest people to tell you that we can't do it.
Yeah, it sounds really. Yeah. It sounds silly, but we have the fastest declines in the industry too, because we want you to know we're not going to
waste your time with spinning the wheels. Like most banks will never give you a decline. They'll just tell you, oh, let's reassess this next month. Cool. Send me the next 3 months bank statements. Like they're we're the fastest at what we do, and we're the best at it.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree. Not from a cockiness level, but from a confidence level. We've seen over 800 breweries personally between the two of us grow when we were able to have the opportunity to have the partnership with them. So feel free. I don't see any questions here, but I'm Rob at eLease.com. He's Brandon at eLease.com. If you prefer to work with a sexy or young guy, email him, Brandon at eLease.com. If you want a little more salt and pepper in the equation, give me a call. It's Rob at eLease.com, and we're always here to help.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.